Welcome everyone to Advocacy in April, the theme being From Isolation to Acceleration, Investing in Students to Create an Equitable Economic Recovery. I'm really excited because today we'll be joined by a very impressive list of speakers, as well as a panel attended. On that panel will be Assembly members Medina McCarty, Assembly members Medina and Assemblymember Berman, as well as Senator John Laird. We will also be having a brief lobbying session, how to train and hone up your lobbying skills before we have legislative visits for students at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to President Stephen Kodor, the president of the SSCCC, to share a brief welcome message with you all.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone on this call. I just want to thank you all for being here and for our spring April, our advocacy in April. Thank you to the students, to the faculty that are on this call, our system partners, our distinguished, our distinguished speakers that will be presenting later on today. I really quickly just want to give a quick shout out to Andrew and all of the legislative affairs directors that really put in the time and the sweat to get this event to happen, and really just getting the panel of very awesome guests that will be presenting here. That's a very tremendous feat. So Andrew, thank you so much. This is definitely a step in the right direction to continue to advocate for our system. So we appreciate all the hard work that you and your lads have done. So as Andrew said, my name is Stephen Kodor. I'm the president of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. I'm a student at Reedley College. I'm the former ASG president there, a student trustee for the State Center Community College District, and the regional affairs director for Region 5. I did that before also. And now I'm serving as the president of the Student Senate. And, I want to start by just saying, why are we all here today, right? What's the point that we're on this call? And for each and every one of us, it's, we're here to advocate. We're here because, we have a dream, we have a vision of a better California community college system, right? That's really the purpose for why we're here. We see the system, we see how the system can be better. And we're here to advocate for that. So we want to see a system that strives to remove racial inequities, right? That are making it harder for certain races to achieve their educational goals. We want to advocate to remove barriers to students' education, like food insecurity, housing insecurity, transportation insecurity, the rising cost of textbooks. We want to see the removal of all those barriers. We want to see a system that advocates to fix financial aid, to remove those barriers like age and time out of school, to be able to provide students the resources that they need to continue their educational goals. I have a quote that I want to share with you all that I was reading the other day that I thought was really great, and it came from Harriet Tubman, the conductor of the Underground Railroad, and she stated that every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember that you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. And I feel like that's why a lot of us do what we do and advocate, because we have a dream. We started out as dreamers, and we have this passion, this strength, and this resolve to be able to change the system for the better. Each and every one of you that's on this call has a unique story. And that definitely helps in our advocacy to change the system. We know what we have gone through within the system, and we want to see it progress and become better. If you haven't heard my personal story, I want to highlight a few things that I've gone through that really make me want to push and strive to see the California community college system become better. When I first came into the system, I struggled from food and from food insecurity. And when I came in, there wasn't many resources, but there was somebody out there that had a dream, and that dream manifested in the arrival of food pantries on California community college campuses. And for me, when I came into the system, I was able to utilize that food pantry to be able to get through the first couple of semesters within the California community college system. I also struggled from transportation insecurity. And some people out there had a dream, and I've seen on certain campuses the arrival of subsidized bus passes of students that had advocated to have bus passes so that students can get themselves from their house, from their work to school, to be able to utilize that education. When I came back into the California community college system, I had no idea, after just leaving my job, how I was ever going to be able to afford textbooks. You know, I could make it into the community college system and have a promise grant and have my tuition paid for, but the $200 textbook was a daunting thing to me. But somebody out there had a dream, and 10 years ago this wouldn't have been the case. But now we have these things called OER, and open educational resources. In the first semester that I came back, I had to take classes that utilized OER material, so that way I was able to get through that first semester of classes. You know, it took the people that advocated to have those resources for students. You know, I had the awesome privilege this past year to enroll my mom. I was a first generation college student, but now my mom has actually come back to the California community college system. And she was so scared of taking an English class. And she didn't know how she was going to get through that. But now, you know, with the implementation of AB 705, she was able to take one English class with a prerequisite course, and she was able to pass it. And when she got through it, she was like, that wasn't even as bad as I thought it was going to be. And to be able to have people that had advocated for that legislation, to be able to remove those barriers that students were experiencing in remedial courses, is huge. So, you know, we need to continue to advocate to see a better system. We need to advocate our legislature to be able to turn the California community college system into a better future. So I just want to thank everyone. I want to encourage you to continue to dream, continue to advocate for those dreams, and let's leave the system better than the way we found it. You know, for me, I feel like I've always been inspired by those that are going to be coming after me. My little sister just graduated school last year from high school, and she's going to be entering the California community college system eventually. And you know, having experienced the barriers that I've experienced, I would love to leave the system better than the way I found it, for people like her, for people like my mom that are in the system, for those that are coming after us, you know, for our present students and for our future students. So I want to thank each and every one of you that are on this call. Thank you for advocating, and I hope for a great rest of our conference today. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that awesome message. You are the first hype man for today, and we love hearing your story. And you are such an amazing president, frankly, for the Student Senate. We're accomplishing great things together, and I think the sky's the limit if things keep going the way they are. So really appreciate you, and thank you for sharing your brief message. So now I want to turn to our theme. It's the purpose of this event. It's really the central message that we would all like to share with you and leave you with. And that theme is from isolation to acceleration, investing in students to create an equitable economic recovery. I think the first kind of phrase is relatively self-explanatory. COVID-19 and its impacts have isolated students. I'm sure you're all familiar with the term being used nowadays, Zoom University. We have been locked in our houses, our apartments, and forced to quarantine for the betterment of public health and public good. But that's had severe impacts on community college students and on our system. It's something that I'll dive into here a little bit. But it's something that it's very real and it's hit us very hard. And now the question is, how do we bounce back? How do we reinvest in our system and create an equitable economic recovery for all students, our whole system. And not only that, drive the economic recovery of our state. Community colleges play a key role in shaping the economic recovery of our state. It trains our state's workforce, and those workforce being students. And so the argument that we're making today is that investing in students is the key to fueling our community colleges and thus the state's economic recovery. So that is, I think, at its core, the theme that we'll be discussing today. The first piece of this I want to talk about is the impact. Prior to the pandemic, research conducted by our system, the Chancellor's Office, found that nearly 50% of students are food insecure and 90% were homeless in the prior year. And this demonstrates that basic needs challenges are not new to our system. They've been ongoing for quite some time. And now, after the pandemic has struck, its impacts have been fully felt and realized. We've discovered that, according to the California Student Aid Commission, 70% of students have lost some or all of their income. And while I don't really have any really comprehensive data to share with you today, no, I don't think any work has been done on that, I think it's all reasonable to assume that these insecurities were horrible, but now are even worse. We really have reached crisis level proportions that have had a severe impact on enrollment, a deleterious effect. We are losing students. Our system is hemorrhaging students, and something needs to be done to stop the bleeding. That is really one thing that is going to immensely slow our state's recovery if we don't have students achieving their academic goals and moving on to joining the workforce and contributing to the economy. That's what drives our state forward. It is our community colleges are our engine of economic recovery. More research indicates that it's estimated by the Public Policy Institute that by 2030, California will experience a shortage of 1.1 million workers holding a bachelor's degree. And coupled with the fact that now more than ever and increasingly, most decent paying jobs require some kind of college credential. Many are saying the bachelor's degree is the new associate's degree. And workers and students continually have to retool and earn a higher level credential in order to be competitive in the workforce. And something that we've seen as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impacts is that it's caused an economic recession, of course. But during periods of recession, students return to our system. We have over 2.1 million students, and that number surges when students try to retool, try to be more competitive, and enrollment usually rises actually during this time when normally a lot of things go down, they're negative. But this time around, we're not seeing that. While enrollment has increased slightly at the University of California and across California State University universities, enrollment has declined by nearly 12%. And this decline has been mostly felt by underrepresented students of color, male students, students over 50 years old, and first-time and returning students. And that goes to show that students who would be entering our system for the first time, they don't feel like they can do it. They feel like they don't have the resources they need to attend college. And returning students who normally would be coming back to community college after trying to earn a degree or a credential that will help them be more successful. We're losing those students as well. And it's really those students who are currently in the system, kind of sticking by it, are the ones that are able to remain enrolled. And so what this really demonstrates is that students simply don't have the resources they need to attend college. They're making really tough decisions about whether or not to attend college, whether or not to work, to take care of family. There are other pressures in people's lives, and they don't have the resources they need to attend. And it's severely threatening the state's recovery. If enrollment continues to decline, we will lose out on students and workers that will help benefit our state. That's really harmful. I think in some sense, we're standing by as we're watching a generation of students lose access to higher education. We like to say that community colleges are a ladder of social and economic mobility, but that ladder hasn't been made a reality for students over the past year. Our state really isn't affirming our commitment to affordability and accessibility. And so I'm sure you're all asking then, okay, well, this is horrible. Well, what can we do to support students? What can we do to get them back on track to academic success? And we, the Student Senate, and channeling the voices of our students who have told us what they need through writing resolutions, through conversations. They have told us that they need investments in order to continue at community college. They need more resources in order to attend. And so I'd like to highlight some key student investments that we feel will strongly benefit students and ensure that enrollment does not continue to decline, that we can fuel the state's engine of economic recovery, that being community colleges, and help more people. And those investments are, one, the passage of AB 775 offered by Senator Berman. This bill would establish basic needs centers across all California community colleges and hire basic needs coordinators that are trained to meet the urgent needs of community college students. If a student literally does not have a place to sleep tonight, if they need help with food, they can come to this center, get the resources they need, and get back on track and not be one of those students that has to drop out, has to pick up more hours, take out a loan in order to succeed. And it also establishes an infrastructure, a system where we have staff, we have a center, that community college, proving that community colleges are a place where you can get help, that community colleges are indeed an institution which can provide for students' needs. It's not just purely educational. Students' needs are holistic. Another key student investment would be Assembly Bill 1456, offered by Assembly members Medina and McCarty, and also Senator Connie Leyva. This bill comprehensively reforms financial aid for college students by providing an opportunity for 274,000 more students to be eligible for financial aid. So many of our students don't receive financial aid because they're too old. Even though 40% of our students are older than 25, they spent too much time out of high school, or they don't have the grades or GPA to prove that they can get a Cal Grant. And furthermore, if they don't meet those eligibility requirements, they're pooled in a competitive pool, a lottery, if you will, where only 3 out of 3 in 25 students receive a competitive Cal Grant award, which leaves students with no predictable way to access financial aid, leaves them guessing. And the lucky few that get by are helped, but many who aren't lucky enough are not. And 1456 addresses this by making it an entitlement that every low-income student will receive aid. They will get the help they need and deserve to help them attend college. And then finally, Assembly Bill 940, offered by Senator McCarty, provides critical mental health services for students who've been isolated. It's the second word in the theme, isolation. Many students have been isolated and their mental health has been suffering severely as a result. I like to count myself as one of those students as well, who's had this is the challenge of staying focused, staying committed to my classes in an online environment. And we also know that suicide is the leading cause of death among college students. And something has to be done to help these students so that that doesn't become the only option that they think they can take. And so these are all key student investments that I hope that you will help us raise this message about these needs, help support students, and get us back on track. Get our state back on track, our colleges back on track, our students back on track. And that's really why we're here to spread this message. So thank you so much. That's really the core of our theme today. And now we'll be shifting to the next segment of our event. We'll be featuring a slate of incredible speakers, the first of which is Chancellor Eli Ortiz-Oakley. I believe the Chancellor is on the line, so I will stop my screen sharing and turn the floor over to Chancellor Oakley. Thank you so much.
All right, Andrew, thank you. And thank you for that great update. And thank you for the work that you're doing. Really appreciate your advocacy and your leadership, and to the entire SSCCC. You all are amazing advocates for our students, so thank you. I know that you all are talking about advocacy here, and I'm just going to take a few moments to tell you what we're working on in the Chancellor's Office, much of which is what you heard already from Andrew. But we're focused on a few major themes. First and foremost is student need. This pandemic, this last year, has taken its toll on all of California, but in particular, our students, particularly those who are in some of the lowest income, most challenging situations. We need to ensure that we have a recovery with equity at the center of it. So that is our main theme in our advocacy, both at the state level and at the federal level. And I think we're very fortunate that we have an administration in DC now that really does care about our students. So now it's our job to push them to make sure that they put the resources out there. And so far, so good. I mean, this last stimulus was a good sign. There's an infrastructure package that's being discussed. We want to make sure that there's lots of resources in there to help our students get the opportunities they need to get back into the workforce, as well as get the education that they need so that they can be prepared to continue to move forward and have the opportunities that they're looking for in the new economy. So let me just take a moment to tell you a little bit about what we're focusing on. We're focused on securing funding for our community colleges. And we are in the midst of a budget cycle right now in the state legislature. We're advocating for more resources for our community colleges. We expect that there will be resources in the state budget given the situation that we're in. Fortunately, we will have a budget surplus. And so that means that there are resources out there. Many of them, I'm sure, will be considered one time, but we could use all the investment we can get. So we're going to be fighting for as much investment as possible so that when we think about a recovery and when we think about a reopening, we have the resources to do it well. And yes, we are talking about a reopening. I'm sure you heard the governor talk about reopening in his speech. We've seen the vaccine rolling out, so we want to make sure the colleges have the resources they need to have a reopening in as safe a manner as possible to protect students and to protect our faculty and staff. You heard Andrew talk about Cal Grant reform. We have been pushing for Cal Grant reform for a number of years. We have been very clear about the lack of participation in the Cal Grant system that our students have historically had. And much of it is because of the eligibility requirements. So we want to see that be reformed. The Cal Grant reform effort that's working its way through the legislature now addresses much of that. We just want to make sure that that also includes the resources that our students deserve. So we have been not having a clear support position to this point. I think that's going to change here shortly, because we've been pushing to ensure that the awards that our students are receiving do not decrease, but in actuality increase, and that we negotiate from the point of view of getting the most support to our students as possible, the support that they deserve. That doesn't mean that we oppose more resources for CSU students or UC students or AICCU students, none of that. But what we are clear about is that there has to be equity, that there has to be a realization that our students have not had the access that they deserve to the Cal Grant system. So that has been our point of view, and that will continue to be our point of view. So we thank you all for your advocacy in that regard. We also want to continue to push for more mental health funding. This is a critical piece of a recovery with equity. We had a crisis before the pandemic. We had a mental health crisis before the pandemic. We had a basic needs crisis before the pandemic. The pandemic has made it worse. And so we need to make sure that there are resources on college campuses to help our students deal with and support them in the challenges that they face. And so many of them lead to mental health crises of all types. So we need the resources on campus to be able to help our students be successful. You've probably all read that there is declining enrollment on our college campuses, and depending on which media report you read, there's differing numbers. Let me be very clear. I think while it's important to understand that there is a decline in enrollment, the more important thing is to understand where that enrollment decline is happening, which demographic of students, and why. It should come as no surprise to anybody that that we've had an enrollment decline. Our students, you all, particularly our older adult students who have family, who have loved ones who have been hit by the pandemic, who have had to struggle to make ends meet, it should come as no surprise that the most vulnerable students in higher education are being hit the hardest by the pandemic and the economic downturn. The greatest enrollment decline amongst our students has been in older adults, adults who are juggling multiple issues, who have children at home during the K-12 shutdown, who are helping to educate their children, who are balancing multiple issues. They have family members who have had health crises. They've had lack of access to health care. They've been hit by the economic downturn. So we're fighting hard to make sure that there are emergency funds available for our students so that they can make better choices. And so that the choice now becomes continuing your education and not having to choose between rent or paying for your books. So that's part of our advocacy. And then, of course, we're going to push, and we continue to push for access to quality broadband, access to the resources that our students need to be successful. If anything, this crisis has shown clearly that California does not have access to quality broadband across the state, and that's something that we need to fix, and we need to turn around. So, broadly speaking, that's our advocacy. Of course, all that is centered on this notion of equity. We're celebrating Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Month, Awareness Month. We feel that it's clear, it's important to student success that our campuses reflect the diversity of our student body. We feel that this is equally important to everything I just mentioned. And so that is certainly a point of advocacy for us, both internally and externally, for the resources that our campuses need in order to meet the goals of the Vision for Success, or the call to action, and deal with some of the issues that we need to deal with in terms of race, ethnicity on our college campuses. That is critically important to student success. And we're going to keep fighting for the resources as well as for the accountability to hold ourselves accountable to these issues. So I know you've got a packed agenda. You've got lots of other speakers, but I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your amazing advocacy. Thank you to the SSCCC for the great work that you're doing. And we will stand ready to work with you to advocate on your behalf. So we look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Oakley. We really appreciate our partnership with the Chancellor's Office, and we hope to continue raising these issues with you. And we very much appreciate your presence here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right, next I'll move to our next speaker here, Faculty Association of California Community Colleges, Board of Governors, Natalina Montero.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Natalina Montero, and I'm a FAC board member for the governor, the faculty board member, sorry, and I'm a chair of the FAC BIPOC committee. I am honored to be here today representing FAC, the Faculty Association of California Community College, and our community college's faculty. I'm grateful that every day I get to serve students like yourselves, and which community college students, like the chancellor just said, is the most diverse student population in the country. And as a political science professor at East Los Angeles College, I teach my students the importance of advocacy and political engagement. In fact, some of my students are currently legislative staff at the Capitol. Maybe you run by them, tell them I was Montero. Montero told us to say hi. Events like Advocacy in April are critical to amplify student voices to make changes. The voices of the 2 million students in our system are powerful and must not only be heard, but also continuously recognized in the halls of the Capitol. Your voices will make the difference as we confront our biggest challenge. For example, community colleges in California have been underfunded for too long. It is time for that to change. No longer should the largest and the most diverse system of public higher education be less funded. This must change now. More funding means more investment for students' basic needs, financial aid, and more faculty support, more diverse faculty, and more resources for all of the important areas that Andrew was talking about earlier that benefit students. Underfunding the most diverse system of public education in California and the nation is a structural and systematic racism. Equity means more funding for the community colleges in California. As you advocate today, we assure you that the faculty have your back. We faculty know that you always have our backs too. We are strongly together. When we come together, we are stronger. So FAC knows that the best voices for students are the students themselves. And we are here to support you. FAC will amplify your voices in our advocacy as we fight for a more equitable and higher funded system. Thank you all for advocating today, and go get your voice heard and go kick some at the Capitol. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And SSCCC definitely shares that message. We are stronger together with our faculty partners. And we also raise the message that it's not only about funding our students, but funding our system. If we get enough resources for students to get back in the classroom, how do we ensure that the faculty there and in our colleges also are prepared and ready to take those students? We absolutely need more resources. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And next, I'll move to Dr. Pam Luster. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for inviting me this morning. My name is Dr. Pam Luster, and I am the proud president of San Diego Mesa College. Greetings from beautiful San Diego, and also this year the chair of the CEO board, and that is all of your presidents and chancellors together in an organization. And I just want to say, Chancellor Oakley and Board of Governors member Dr. Montero have done a beautiful job of talking about the kinds of advocacy, and Andrew, you as well, that is so important on behalf of students. And so I'm going to pivot a little bit from what I was going to say, because you've heard our points. We want more resources in the pockets of our students. We know that students know what to do with the resources that they have. This isn't about money management or anything else. This is about having the resources that one needs to seek a higher education. And so we are advocating for that, at the top of our lungs. And what I would say about this time is that we are all on the same page. I have been in the system a very long time, and sometimes we have different groups that want different things because it meets their constituents' needs. At this point, we're all on the same page. We want more resources for our students, and we want more resources for our institutions, so that, as Andrew was saying, we are prepared for the students who access us. We are there on day one with the kinds of resources and services that are needed, and that they are easy to access and to find success. What I think is really critical right now as you advocate with our elected officials is to let them know that we're on the same page, that as students, as classified professionals, as administrators, faculty, boards of trustees, we're in this to win it together. And so there is no divide and conquer. There is no, I will pick up your issue and not your issue, because we are all one. And so as you are physically in the Capitol, or you are online into Capitol offices, this united approach will be one that will be really important. A recovery with equity is something that we cannot overlook. The students who left our system first were the students who need us the most, who have the least amount of access and agency around higher education. And so we are holding ourselves accountable as college presidents, chancellors, faculty as well, in terms of, how will we do this recovery? Because we will be back on our campuses, but we are forever changed by this experience. So I would hope that students will use your agency to speak on your campuses about what your needs are to the leadership that's on your campuses, and talk about the kinds of, whether it's broadband, whether, whatever else it might be, use that agency on your campus. When you speak as students, we listen. And it's really important that you continue to do that. I am always grateful for student leaders. You are all volunteers in this Army, and you are going to school and doing everything else while the rest of us get paid to do this. And so I think that it's even more important that we honor the work that you do as volunteers in this process. So I would say, not unlike what Dr. Montero just said, go kicking a little what, and know that we are absolutely behind you every step of the way as you exercise your agency in this legislative process. So good luck. And we look forward to being right behind you. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Pam. I really appreciate you being here. And again, I see like we're just all coming together and raising that same message and that same voice. And I'm so grateful for that. As students, we have allies and our other stakeholders in our system. And we're all on the same page about what we need. And I think that's what's absolutely critical in this moment, is coming together and raising the need for these issues. So thank you so much, and for being here today, and I really appreciate your comments. Next, I'll move to Dr. Alonde Jose. Alonde, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be with you here this morning. On behalf of the governor, I think he would like to welcome you to the building behind me for your virtual advocacy. Many of you may know that approximately 2 months ago, we released a report on behalf of Californians called Recovery with Equity. And I heard Dr. Lester just refer to recovery with equity. And for us, what that means is that we need to think very carefully about, on the other side of this pandemic, what does it mean for California students to return to school? What does it mean to return in a way that lifts up the varied experiences of California students and meets them where they are? And this is particularly appropriate for community college students. Our Recovery with Equity report really focuses on a few things that I think are especially applicable to the community colleges. One is that every student in our state deserves to have a sense of belonging when they arrive on their campus. It means being able to have a diverse set of faculty, staff, and administration who are responsible for your schools, for your education. It also means being able to see yourselves in the curriculum itself, and that your institution is providing you with the kinds of resources and the kinds of supports that confer a sense of belonging. Another thing that we've shared with many of you that is essential and critical to an equitable recovery is the focus on basic needs. What we learned from this pandemic is that if we aren't focused on the basic needs of students, it includes financial aid, it includes digital equity, it includes having access to the resources and services for which students are entitled, like CalFresh. If we don't focus on those, we won't be able to have students return in a way that is fair, that is just, and that allows them to actually focus on their academic journey. We also talked very much in this task force about what we needed to do to provide the kinds of supports to students to get access to higher education, to be able to easily be able to apply to college, to enroll in college, to transfer between institutions. It is the responsibility of your higher education leaders to see every student in this state as one of their students, not every student in their segment, but every student in this state. Because the truth is, so many community college students touch more than one community college and touch more than one segment. And it's incumbent upon the state and upon our institutions to ensure that we are doing the work that we need to do to make that path smoother and easier. One way in which we're very interested to see how this evolves, but we're very pleased that Assemblymember Berman is sponsoring AB 1111, which picks up on one of the very specific recommendations in our report, which calls for a common course numbering so that students who go to multiple community colleges know that an introductory English course is the same at all colleges and aren't trying to figure out how then that applies if they in fact want to transfer to another institution. We're looking at the kinds of things that are fundamentally student-centered as we think about this recovery, and fundamentally driven by the needs, the desires, and what our students deserve. So I just want to say on behalf of the governor, thank you for your advocacy. You know, there's always an open door at the governor's office. I've been delighted to be able to meet with you several times already this year and continue to do as much. And also on behalf of the governor, I want to underscore his particular commitment to students. When I first started this job 2 years ago, the governor got numerous requests for meetings, for meet and greets. And the very first higher education request that he took was when the students came into the office. It wasn't the CSU administration, it wasn't the UC administration, it wasn't the community college administration. It was when all of the student groups together came and said, Governor, we would like to meet with you, not your higher education policy advisor, with you. And that was the first higher education meeting that he took. And I think it's really indicative of his commitment to students and to your experiences. So I just want to say thank you very much for your continued advocacy, and please know that we look forward to continuing to partner with you.
Thank you so much, Londa. I really appreciate you being here and highlighting some of the components of the governor's excellent report. He set a very strong pathway for us to recover as a state in terms of education, and we greatly appreciate, I think, the personal leadership that you've shown in moving that work forward, and excellently advising the governor on all issues higher education. We really appreciate you being here and for your comments. All right. Next, I believe Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kolonakis is with us. So Lieutenant Governor, please, whenever you're ready, be happy to hear your comments. Thank you. She might have just logged in, so we'll give her just a few moments here. Lieutenant Governor Kolonakis, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
All right, there we go. Wouldn't let me start the video. How are you, Andrew?
Doing great. Thank you so much for being with us.
Great, great. It is wonderful to be here with all of you for your Ledge Day. And, you know, I know we only have a few minutes. One of my jobs is that I serve as the chair of the State Lands Commission, and as a result sit as a member of the Coastal Commission. But Alexandra Reed's on my team, who really enjoys working with all of you so much. I wanted to make sure that I hopped off of Coastal to join you for a few minutes. Hold on, where did she give me my notes? Andrew, I believe Alexandra suggested that I give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm so sorry, you guys. I've got an absolutely packed day today. Here we go. Alexandra gives me a list of what to talk about, what you might be interested in. I want to talk about some of the legislation and things that are moving forward in this legislative cycle. But before I do, first of all, I want to just thank all of you for your participation and your activism. It is incredibly important that we have in our democracy, which is after all self-government, that we have people who are willing to step out of their everyday life, roll up their sleeves, and get involved and make sure that their voices are heard. There is no other way that we can ensure that government is transparent and responsive to the people than if the people are organized in making sure that voices are heard. And there is no question that student involvement has always been a very important part of this equation. So very briefly, I just want to tell you why public higher education is so important to me personally. It has to do with my own background. My grandmother in Greece never learned to read or write. She believed in the promise of America and let her son, my father, come to the United States when he was just a teenager, alone, no money, to work in the fields of California as a farm worker. He made his way through the support of people in his community, made his way to Sacramento State University, where he got an education. He didn't quite graduate. I was the first in my family to go to a four-year college and graduate. But certainly his ability to go from the fields to the halls of public higher education is what changed the trajectory of his life, my life, and the opportunity for our family. And my whole life, as I have worked in the private sector, worked in government, but myself worked as an organizer and an activist through many years, including very early on when I was a staffer at the California Democratic Party. It has always been obvious to me that California's system of public higher education is a key part of this pathway that millions of Californians follow in order to build a better life for themselves and for their families. And so this was central when I decided to run for lieutenant governor. And in the last 2.5 years that I've been in this position, I've made it my business to be very active as a member of the UC and the CSU boards, and worked with the legislature to get a bill which has now put the lieutenant governor on the board of the community college system. So I am, as lieutenant governor, the only elected official to sit on all three. With that, I thought maybe just to talk very quickly about some of the things that we are watching. As far as the community college system goes, which I know is your area of activism and engagement, there's a lot happening. We know that enrollment is down. This is troubling, especially at a time when we know that students are looking for upskilling, looking for the ability to, especially if they are not working right now, to be able to enroll in courses that will either help them pursue their pathway into the UC or the CSU, or get the skills and the training that they need now for the jobs that we anticipate are going to be coming back once we reopen. So this is something that we're watching, that we're concerned about. At the same time, we have better tools than ever to be able to handle these challenges. And what I mean by that is that we have a budget surplus at the state level, a $15 billion budget surplus, and we have quite a bit of support at the federal level with the American Rescue Act. So working with the governor's office, we have been very focused, and I see Lande Ajase is, at least I see her smiling picture, but in fact, we had a conversation just yesterday, recognizing the moment that we are in and the opportunity to use the financial resources that we have to really step up what we can do for our students, in particular as they navigate the system of public higher education in a way that will make the whole system more user-friendly. This to me is something that's extremely important. I'm sure Lande is going to go into her report and some of the very specific things that we can do. So the other thing that we are focused on are two pieces of legislation in particular. One is the reform of the Cal Grant system. We know that students navigating the community college system are often have the biggest challenges in being able to access those funds, making the system and the process easier to navigate will certainly help students in the community college system. And of course, we also believe it's important that these funds can help support the full cost of the community college and higher education experience, in order to help, in order to recognize that tuition is really just one small part of it. Housing, books, support for summer enrollment, all of these things are elements that that are currently barriers and barriers to equity and access that we can address through Cal Grant reform. And then finally, the ability to do an even better job at the associate's degree for transfer program, in having that system continue with reforms will help make sure that that system is easier to navigate, more comprehensive, things like, and again, this is one of Lande's initiatives, having consistency with course numbering, things that really should be very simple, but currently are very complicated and necessarily make it more difficult for students to navigate the system. So I think I'm at the end of my time, Andrew. Let me just conclude by saying we see you. You are the future. Thank you for your engagement. We won't know how this experience is working for you unless you tell us. And so the process and the communication that we have throughout the year with you to understand the student experience, to make sure that we are able to rely on you so that others hear your experience, so that government can work better for our students navigating public higher education, because frankly, this has been the key to California's success, to the richness of our society, and of course, to the creation of this great big economy, the 5th largest in the world. And I see Assemblyman Medina. Thank you for everything that you do, Assembly Member, for our students and for our state. So with that, Andrew, I will hand it back to you. And thank you so much for inviting me to be here with all of you today.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here. And we are also incredibly pleased that you've joined us from the California Community College Board of Governors. We have already seen the impacts of your leadership and the expertise that you bring to bear. And we are very excited to see what you do in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. With that, we have concluded the guest speaking portion of our event. We now next be moving on to our legislative panel. With us today, we are welcoming Assembly members Jose Medina, Chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee, as well as Assembly member Mark Berman, and Senator John Laird, Chair of the Senate Budget Education Committee. So with that, I'm going to move first to just a little bit about what this panel is about. We have heard from our speakers, and of course, you've heard from myself about creating an equitable economic recovery. Certainly, COVID-19 has had lots of challenges for everyone in the past year, has led to a recession that has impacted so many. And so today, I'd like to dive into this topic with the policymakers, the people who make it happen, who have been doing incredible work, and asking them, what will it take to bring about an economic recovery, and what ideas our panelists have on how to help us get there. And so first, I'd like to turn to Assemblymember Jose Medina. Hi, and thank you for being here. I'd like to just kind of turn it over to you to introduce yourself and just to give a brief statement.
Thank you, Andrew. Great to be here with you and all the other student leaders. So as Andrew said, I'm Assembly Member Jose Medina. I chair the Committee on Higher Education in the Assembly. I spent 34 years as a teacher before getting elected to the state legislature. Besides being a teacher, I was also a school board member, school board in Jurupa Unified School District, and then a trustee at Riverside Community College, where I spent 13 years as a trustee. So I think it would be very true to say that education has been my lifelong passion. I saw firsthand as a teacher, how education changes lives, and how higher education is a pathway to economic prosperity, and that getting a degree changes the lives of those students as well. So I'm very happy to be here in the capacity of chair of higher education. We've certainly seen this past year with the pandemic how difficult it is to be a student. It was difficult already. We were hearing, as I know my colleague, Mr. Berman, will reiterate, you know, the difficult times that students were facing before the pandemic, food insecurity, not knowing where their next meal might be coming from, the need for pantries on campuses, students having to decide between paying the rent, buying books, or paying tuition, not knowing where they were going to be sleeping at night. And so, you know, we knew this before the pandemic hit, and now things have just gotten more difficult for students. We see the decline in enrollment in community colleges especially. And so I am happy to be here to discuss and share with you and my colleagues what we can do to move forward to help the situation for students in the state of California. And with that, I'll close for now and look forward to the questions that you might have, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you having you as well. Can't wait to get into the discussion here. Next, I'll go to Senator Laird. Please feel free to introduce yourself. You know, share a few comments, and we'll dive into. We'll introduce Senator Berman, and then we'll move to our questions.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here with you, and it's particularly great to be here with Jose Medina and Mark Berman, who I love and enjoy working with, and I'm really going to enjoy working with on these issues. And just by way of introduction, I just did the podcast for the Senate Democratic Caucus, and they referred to me as a freshman with an asterisk. Because I'm coming in after 6 years in the state assembly where I was budget chair most of my run, and then 8 years in Jerry Brown's cabinet. And the pro tem responded by appointing me to everything. So I am on 9 committees, and I am the chair of the Education Budget Subcommittee. And for the people on the call that I don't know, along the way, I spent 8 years on a community college board before I came to the state assembly, and it was a very important duty because I think 80% of the students in higher education are in community colleges, and we really struggled with local bond campaigns, with all the different issues, with accessibility, with good quality, with affordability. And I have to say that in the almost 20 years since I left the College Board, the world has changed in different ways. We were not talking about food insecurity at the level in community colleges that we are now. The whole issue of fees and the adequate coverage in the student aid system for the broad array of expenses is totally different. And there are things that we've had our hearings informationally. We had 8 in February, and we had one that was just focused on community colleges, and another one that was largely focused on student aid. And I know it's exactly what you're interested in. And in advance, I apologize for the fact that I have to leave halfway through this, but it's just great to be here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Yes, thank you so much. And it certainly seems a man of many talents, and also an alum of the community college system. And so we appreciate you for the time that you have with us today. And just to let everyone know, yes, Senator Laird will be leaving just for 30 minutes early for the panel. Just wanted to flag that for you all, but we're really excited to have him here. And next I'll turn to Senator Berman.
Thank you, Andrew, and you know, so excited to be here today. I'm Assembly Member Mark Berman. I represent the 24th Assembly District, which is northern Santa Clara County, southern San Mateo County, kind of the heart of Silicon Valley. And I hope to meet my colleagues' experience that they have in the higher education system with the energy and passion that I have for the issue, if I don't necessarily have the years of experience that they do. When I was elected to the Assembly, I asked the Speaker to appoint me to Chair Medina's committee, the Higher Education Committee. He declined my request, and so I created my own committee. I created the select committee on the master plan for higher education, which we don't hear bills, but we do have informational hearings to talk about issues, to hear from witnesses, and to try to drive policy through information gathering. And we've had, I can't count the number of hearings we've had over the past 4 years that I've chaired the committee. Since 2019, I'm proud to have worked with the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, with all of you, to advance student-centered legislation. And we have a couple of great bills this year that I'll dive more into as the conversation goes on. So glad to join my friend, Senator Laird. Senator Laird used to, before he was, when he was working for the governor, would stop by my office a whole lot to chat with me and also to chat with my team, some of whom used to be his team. And I miss seeing him informally in the office. So looking forward to getting back to those days, hopefully soon. But looking forward to the conversation.
All right, then without further ado, I'll jump right into the kind of the discussion here. So first, I just want to kind of highlight the obvious, go to the obvious here, and that's that COVID-19 has turned everyone's world upside down. And it's really brought to light or exacerbated issues in higher education of racial injustice, basic needs, and other various inequities. And many view this as a result, as an opportunity to address long-standing inequity. And a very obvious example being President Biden's plans to build back better, laying out a vision. And so I'd like to ask each of you and maybe have some discussion about, how do you view this moment as an opportunity to address inequity in higher education? And what are some ways that we can help address it? And of course, I'd like, if you feel like offering, sharing some current plans that you have in terms of legislation or other work that you're working on. So first, I'll move to Assemblymember Medina, please.
Thank you, Andrew. Let me share maybe 3 bills that I'm working on this year that I think address inequities in higher education. The first one was passed yesterday out of the Assembly, and that was AB 337, which I believe this group is the sponsor of, which was to increase the number, or if not the number, increase the voting right of the representatives on the California Community College Board of Governors. So I believe that what the bill did is making sure that both representatives have the right to vote. I think we've seen in different, when students are on different boards, they have a year where they serve on the board and don't have the right to vote. So yesterday when I had talked about this bill, I said, one student having the right to vote is not enough. Why don't let's make sure that both students who are serving on the Board of Governors have from the outset the right to vote. Let's make sure that we hear the student's voice loud and clear. So that was AB 337. The next bill that I think is of interest to you, AB 927, which builds upon the work of Senator Marty Block and Senator Jerry Hill. It gives community colleges the ability to expand on offering the 4-year college degree at the community college. Senator Block's initial work has been in place for quite a while. We've gotten reports back, and we certainly have heard from the students of how well this program works. So AB 927 would be an expansion of that program, would allow more community colleges to be able to offer a 4-year degree if it is not duplicative of the work or the degree programs that are offered in CSU and UC. And we see that there are many areas across the state and employment that the community colleges can do in offering the 4-year degree. So 927 builds upon that. And the last one that I would like to mention is AB 1456, which you heard the Lieutenant Governor talk about, and that is Cal Grant reform, something that Assembly Member Kevin McCarty and Senator Connie Leyva and I have been working on for now a couple of years. And it really does address the issue of lack of equity in higher education. In the 8 years that I've been here, I've become it's become clear to me that student aid is not equal among the segments. And it's somewhat of a irony, perhaps, that that it's the students that you see who I think get the most financial aid, where it's probably the students at the community college who need the financial aid most. So AB 1456 and working with the Student Aid Commission is kind of a redoing of the whole system of financial aid, making sure, as the Lieutenant Governor said, that we address student needs that go beyond tuition, that we address students' needs in transportation, in housing, in food, in books. So it allows for that. It's way overdue. It's probably been more than 20 years that anyone has looked at redoing the financial aid system. I think it's more realistic. It takes away some of the barriers that have been in place, things like age. No longer are students coming into higher education right out of high school. We see working parents and higher education. So it takes away the barriers of age and how many years out of high school, takes those out. And it tries to simplify the whole system, a system that was very difficult to navigate in the past, and makes it, we talk now about either students in 2-year community college or students in the 4-year program. So it's something that we're very dedicated to getting done, and we hope we can get that done this year. So those are the 3 bills that I am working on this year that I think addresses inequities in higher education.
Thank you so much, Asmember Medina. And I think those are excellent ways, I think, that we can address some of these inequities that really have come to a head, especially in terms of financial aid. So next, I'd like to move to Senator Laird. Please share your thoughts.
Thank you. And it's always hard to follow Jose, because I just always want to say I totally agree, and then figure out where to go from there. But fortunately, while I totally agree, I have the budget assignment, and a lot of those things are going to come or have the potential of coming through that. We're having a press conference at 11 o'clock this morning, the Senate budget people, and it's with the pro tem, and it's in part because we have this incredible slug of one-time money that is in this budget, and coupled with what comes from the federal stimulus. And so I think there's a desire to take some intractable problems and budget for impact. And even if it's one-time money, try to spread it across 2 or 3 or 4 years to really address it. And one of the places that I have been trying to draw the debate, it was the area of the third bill that Assemblymember Medina just mentioned, which is on student aid, because we really have the chance to do some fundamental things with a slug of money. And it just depends how far we could go, because there's the trouble with student aid reform is it all revolves around money, and it sort of goes one of 2 ways, where you can take the existing system and just spread it more widely to catch more students, or you can wrap around the additional services, like make sure that you fund books or housing or
food or the other things that are above just fees? Or can you do a combination of both, which is spread it more widely to people and then spread the grants more widely? And so it's a question of what you decide to do toward that goal. And so I think we all have that goal, and we all have the shot of doing something here in this budget to do that. And it just goes, and it is not just a unique community college thing. It goes to all three levels of higher education, although I share in general what Jose just said, that many times it tilts toward the other two systems and not to this. And I know when I was budget chair in the assembly during my service, we did a bond, and historically facilities, it always just went overwhelmingly to UC and CSUs. And in that one bond in 2006, we flipped it. We made 40% go to community colleges and then 30 CSU and 30 UCs, because community colleges had 80% of the students. And so I think that if you want to come out of today and talk among yourselves, it is really focusing your advocacy efforts on two or three of these defined issues as we move into this. Because the other thing, just to say, is that we got thrown a little wrench when the income tax deadline got moved to May 17th, because normally the governor issues his revised budget in mid-May based on what we got on April 15th, and then we sprint to the end knowing what the revenues are. And now he has to release his budget without knowing what the final revenues are. And we have to meet the statutory deadline to land a budget on his desk without being certain what the revenues are. And there's a chance that we do one budget and then come back and tweak it in the summer, or do something when we know what the revenues are. But that shouldn't detract us from the goals that we have. And the goals are pay off community college deferrals, try to see what we can do about enrollment, given the enrollment hits that have happened during the pandemic, deal with student aid and all the ancillary issues, and try to get things done. So I think we have an amazing opportunity. And as Andrew said during the question, the pandemic has accentuated disparities that existed before the pandemic, but now it gives us a chance to focus on them and address them. So I think that's what we want to do as part of the budget process.
Thank you, Senator Laird. And now, Mark, let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, as Senator Laird said, I agree with everything Senator Laird said, everything that Assemblymember Medina said. That's not abnormal. I usually do. This moment is absolutely an opportunity to address inequity in higher education. For example, the pandemic has only exacerbated the existing basic needs challenges that students face, which has been alluded to earlier today. And these needs require urgent action. This is why I'm so proud to author and be joined by all of you, SSCCC, as a sponsor of AB 775, which would address students' basic needs. And that's a bill that I'll talk a little bit more about later on in our conversation. But this year, I'm also authoring two bills on the topic of transfer, which came out of the work of the Select Committee on the Master Plan that my friend, Assemblymember Medina, has been, I think, participated in every hearing that we've had, which is very unique for a Select Committee. And I'm grateful for his leadership and partnership on these issues. Last year, the Select Committee released our report that outlined key findings and policy themes that highlight important takeaways from the 5 hearings that we convened in the first 2 years of the Select Committee's existence. And we previewed that the Select Committee is now going to focus on the transfer process. As some of you might know, the master plan promised an accessible, affordable, and high quality higher education for all students who qualify. And the transfer pathway from community college to 4-year institution is an integral component of the master plan's commitment to access and to affordability. Many students attend community college with the hope of transferring to complete a bachelor's degree. However, the master plan did not actually say how transfer would work in practice for students. And recent efforts such as the associate degree for transfer, the ADT, and remedial education reform have led to important gains. But one thing that has been abundantly clear to the Select Committee throughout all of our hearings is that the transfer process is still unnecessarily complex, confusing, and really difficult for the vast majority of students to navigate. We also learned that transfer students are more often Black and Latino, as well as first generation, highlighting transfer as an important way to close equity gaps that exist in California. Last October, the Select Committee held our first virtual conversation on transfer, and we centered it on the student transfer experience. We heard that students are still taking far too long to transfer, that only 19% of students with a goal of transferring do so in 4 years, and only 28% successfully transfer within 6 years. And we also learned that these equity gaps still exist, with Latino and Black students doing worse than their peers. The highlight of the event was the students who shared their personal transfer stories and valuable insights and provided recommendations to improve the transfer process from their lived experiences. And these recommendations included scheduling classes at times that reflect the needs of students, especially those who work, improving academic counseling and communication of transfer pathways like the ADT, ensuring seamless communication between community colleges and four-year universities, aligning course requirements both within the systems and between the systems, ensuring that student services and departments are culturally competent, increasing student representation to engage student voices like Mr. Medina spoke about, and creating policies that help non-traditional and vulnerable students meet their transfer goals. The students also discussed equity and shared the importance of the community college system as a second chance, the primary access point of higher education for so many first generation, low income, and underrepresented minority students. And given that transfer by definition is intersegmental and each higher education system has a role to play, in January, I held my second virtual conversation on transfer that involved California's higher education system leaders from all four systems, the community colleges, UC, CSU, and also the Association of Independent California Colleges and Universities. And all of the higher education leaders said that transfer is a priority and acknowledged that the transfer process needs to be improved for students. There's a clear need to further streamline and make the transfer process easier for students to navigate, especially during these challenging and unprecedented times. And so based on these conversations with students, I introduced AB 928, which reimagines the transfer process from the student perspective. AB 928, the Student Transfer Achievement Reform Act of 2021, addresses some of the most significant barriers to improving transfer and scaling the ADT by creating an intersegmental implementation committee to provide greater state level accountability for ADT implementation to significantly increase transfer and close racial equity gaps. It sets a target date for the CSU and the UC to consolidate the two general education pathways into one pathway that satisfies the requirements for transfer admission to both the CSU and the UC. And it requires California community college students to be put on an ADT pathway where one exists for their intended major, as opposed to a local associate's degree in the same academic major, unless students opt out, which they have the ability to do. AB 928 is comprehensive. It's student-centered legislation that would streamline and improve the transfer process, making it easier for California students to accomplish their educational goals. And as California begins to recover from the pandemic, now more than ever, it's critical to increase degree attainment, improve time to degree, and close racial equity gaps. I also introduced AB 1111, which is a complementary bill that would create a common course numbering system at California community colleges. So comparable courses would have the same course number at all community colleges, and this will reduce unnecessary confusion, ease advising, streamline transfer, and reduce excess credit accumulation, saving students both time and money. There's something for everybody to hate in these bills, except for the students. I think everything in here, the students should really hopefully appreciate and support it. It came out of my conversations with all of you, and look forward to y'all's support and help getting these bills passed.
Thank you so much, Senator Berman. And I mean, wow. I mean, a lot of great bills, all things that will be a benefit to students. So I greatly appreciate your leadership on that. And I just want to be respectful of Senator Laird's time here. I want to go to him for one final question, and then Senator Laird, you have to take your leave, I imagine. But students have been hyper-focused on financial aid, and you touched on this briefly in your first comment, but I want to go back to you and say, how can we achieve structural reform in this legislative session and achieve meaningful reform for all students? You know, and you mentioned some things about the budget. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that. So
I think that, and I apologize for the fact that I have to go in a few minutes. It is really, it is what I said. I think that the issues are broadening who it applies to and broadening what it is. And the important thing I would say to all of you on this call is that you have a piece of this in your hands by how you lobby and how you talk about it. And, you know, yesterday, and I'm sure Jose did the same thing, I did a Zoom with school administrators and they asked how to lobby. And I said, could you go through an entire presentation without mentioning the word funding and mentioning the word full-time equivalent? It is, could you basically tell the story on the ground of what the actual impact is to people? And I tell this story all the time to community college groups, that when I was on the community college board at graduation, our gift to the students was no speeches at graduation. There would be no lengthy speeches as graduation. There was always one exception. And that was that the vice president for instruction would stand up and highlight 3 or 4 students at graduation and describe their road to that night. And there was always somebody that was a single parent that had taken one class a semester for 6 years while they were working 2 jobs and raising a family, and they got there that night to get their AA. And it was always powerful. We all would cheer wildly, and it would always remind me why I was doing the work. That's much more powerful than a full-time equivalent argument or here's the grant level by $9 difference. It meant much more to know exactly what it meant in somebody's life, and here is the life of that person. And so when we talk about this, we'll have plenty of discussions about what the reforms are, how wide they are, and whether we have enough money. The important thing is to never take your eye off the ball of how this affects every one of you and your friends and the people at each campus, and to make that story and make it compelling, because I always find it just motivates me to do what I want to do anyway, because you get this feeling. There's certain times, there are those of us who are elected officials, that you're in a situation and you walk away and you say, oh man, it's not just that I have to do something, I really have to be successful. I have to really make this happen. And so that's what I would say about the student aid piece, is just make sure that you guys tell your stories and tell the stories of your peers and really drive them home, so that our colleagues know this is the year, this is the time, and this is the issue that will get at inequities as much as anything. So I apologize for having to go, but I'm very confident that Jose and Mark are going to do an outstanding job the next half hour. And I would just say in advance, I agree with everything they're about to say. So thanks for having me today. I apologize that this was quick.
no, we really appreciate your time, and thank you so much, Senator Laird, and of course appreciate you know, all your thoughts and comments on it. We'll certainly raise the student voices on this. So thank you.
Great. Take care.
All right. Well, with that, I want to kind of just maybe reiterate the question a little bit more. So as I mentioned, you know, students have been hyper-focused on financial aid reform, and the Fixed Financial Aid Coalition is a coalition made up of UC, CSU, and community college students. And we've all been united in calling on the legislature and stakeholders to modernize the state's Cal Grant program. And I think given the pandemic, many now view the need to be greater than ever. And so, you know, I'll pose the same question as I did to Senator Laird, and that's, how can we achieve this in this session and make meaningful change, structural change in our state's program? So Assemblymember Berman, I'd like to turn to you first, and then to the man behind the bill next, Assemblymember Medina.
Thank you, Andrew, and you're absolutely right. So I'll go quick so that Mr. Medina can dive into how things are going. I also just really want to second what Senator Laird said at the end there around telling the story of the students. I had a bill a couple of years ago around letting community college students sleep in their cars on campus, AB 302 from 3 or 4 years ago, and one of the students who testified, a guy named Anthony White. I still have colleagues come up to me and tell me, I remember the testimony he gave. I remember the story he told of what he went through, sleeping in his pickup truck, being afraid, being an Army veteran, certain family troubles that were created by that. So tell your story, because it really does resonate at a deep level with me and my colleagues. To go specifically to your question, Andrew, as I mentioned, the master plan promised an accessible, affordable, and high quality higher education, and financial aid is what makes college affordable and within reach for so many students. And so I'm honored to support the Fixed Financial Aid Coalition's efforts. Thank you for your advocacy. Yeah, it was made abundantly clear throughout the select committee hearings that the student's total cost of attendance, the real cost of college, includes so much more than tuition. And I think Assemblymember Medina alluded to it earlier, but there's an organization, I can't remember if it was the Campaign for College Opportunity or TCUS, the Institute for College Access and Success, that has a graph that shows the cost of UC, CSU, and community college in all the regions across California, and which system is most expensive in terms of the real cost. And to my shock and surprise, in many of the regions across California, the real cost of going to community college is actually higher than the cost of going to CSU or UC because of our financial aid system. So Cal grants are generally linked to tuition costs, even though the expenses of attending and successfully completing college go so far beyond that. And so I'm grateful to my colleague, Assemblymember Medina, to my other colleague, Assemblymember McCarty, who are leading this effort, and want to turn it over to the man himself to talk about how that effort is going.
Andrew, to pick up on Assemblymember Berman, when he brought his bill a couple of years ago, I think, right, to allow students to sleep in their cars in the parking lots of community colleges, I voted for the bill, and the discussion regarding it, centered around the safety of students sleeping in their cars in parking lots at community colleges campuses, and certainly the hesitancy of some of the districts to allow that because of the safety issues. And others in our colleagues talked about that this was just putting a Band-Aid on the need that students have. But I talk about Mr. Berman's bill often because I think that his thought was, what can we do concretely now, immediately, to address student needs? And I applauded Mr. Berman for bringing that bill forward, and it also highlighted the fact that change was needed, that we weren't doing a good job of addressing student needs, which is really kind of fundamentally what we're trying to do with a reform in student aid. I think it is a big endeavor, as Senator Laird said. It's also a question of money. Just to look at the figures for community colleges, I think we have 124,000 students today who are eligible for Cal Grant. The new system would expand that, almost triple the number. Yeah, tripling the number of students at community colleges, at community colleges to 367,000 students. So I think it is a big endeavor. We are trying to do, I think, the most for the most needy students. I think that is also an aim of our Cal Grant reform. I very much agree with both Senator Laird and Assemblymember Berman that the student stories are what needs to be told. I think the CSU has over the years traditionally been very effective in their lobbying. They bring their students with them. I know that we passed a bill not too long ago to allow community colleges to assess, right, to assess themselves as student government. I think a $1 fee, or whatever you want to call it, so that community college students could be more effective and have a stronger voice, have more of an ability to communicate with legislators. So that is definitely what needs to be done in this effort. Tell the student story, make sure that legislators up here hear the importance and the need to get this done and to get it done this year.
Thank you so much, Member Medina. And we certainly hope to highlight that along with you and your office, is really sharing that student message, galvanize support, share those stories that really speak and mean so much and have such a great impact. So you should look forward to seeing that from us and from our other student partners at the UC and CSU and trying to make the case for this critical reform. And so next, I kind of want to turn to another question here, more community college, I guess specific, and talking about student challenges in particular. I think we've tried to. The student challenges have been, kind of quantified and talked about in many different ways as stakeholders try to really fully grasp the extent and depth of the COVID-19's impact on students. And to me, one statistic really stands out, at least among the community colleges, and that is enrollment has dropped around 12% statewide, and as many as high as 20% at some colleges. And during a time when enrollment really increases during a recession. So, I mean, you can almost think of it as being slightly higher than 12%. And this drop is most severe for underrepresented students of color, students over 50 years old, and many first-time returning students. And so in many ways, we're watching this generation of students lose out on accessing higher education. And, although, it's only been a year, I really want to ask both of you and get your perspective on what you think comes to mind as the cause of this decline in enrollment, and in what ways the state can address it in a really meaningful way. And so first, I'll turn to, Assemblymember Medina first for your response.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I think the figures that we've seen, the decline in enrollment that you've talked about, that I think is somewhere between, Andrew, 12 and around 12% drop in enrollment during the pandemic, somewhere around that. I would say, as a community college trustee, having my 13 years, we all know that community college students, more than any other students in higher education, given where they are forced to look for outside support. They're older, they may have families, or they may be more independent, but they work. And the fact that they work has had impact on the time that it takes to complete the AA degree. And so I think that given the fact that they have been working in the past, that they very likely could have lost their jobs during the pandemic, right? As the pandemic, COVID-19 hit people of color even harder than the general public. And so I think part of the not being able to return may have been that, there could be, and I have heard, students who have had to support their families, whether it's their children, or in some cases, right, support and be helpful to their parents, right, and be a source of income to their parents. So I think all these different circumstances, situations help to explain why the low return back to class and the drop in enrollment. And it would be a tragedy. It really would be, as everyone has noted. There are certainly more students of color in the community college, and it would be a travesty if we don't get some of these students back. And we need to do as much outreach, and I know that community colleges are doing that, trying to stay in actual contact, right? Whether it's a phone call or an email to some of the students, and try to make sure that we can get them back. Also, I'm aware that being able to offer support was very important. And we saw some philanthropic groups come up with money right at the outset to help students. And that money disappeared in hours. And we're talking about considerable amount of money, but the need was so big that that money that was provided either by philanthropic groups or the community colleges themselves kind of disappeared within hours. And I think the need helps explain then why we're seeing the decline in enrollment. And Andrew,
I think you might.
Oh, sorry, apologize. Thank you so much for Medina. And yeah, that's something that I think I really agree with, that it's a very interesting kind of clue. You know, those dollars disappearing so rapidly, I think really demonstrated that there's kind of this unseen, and hopefully we're making it more seen, you know, today, but need that students require in order to attend college. It's simply the case, I think, that they lack resources to continue to attend. And I certainly think that's kind of our thoughts on it. But as Senator Berman, I really want to hear your thoughts as well.
Completely appreciate that, Andrew, and totally agree. You know, the pandemic has definitely impacted enrollment, but basic needs challenges from before the pandemic that have been exacerbated during the pandemic, I think, are really having a huge impact. You know, students were already struggling with hunger, housing insecurity, homelessness before COVID-19, and a lot of those students work in the service sector, work hourly jobs that were just totally eliminated during the pandemic, and that makes it even harder for them to you know, if they can't make enough money to keep the lights on, it makes it harder for them to put their resources and time towards their. I was happy to see in the governor's 2020-2021 proposed budget that he proposed significant investment to address the basic needs of community college students. The proposed investment includes $30 million ongoing Prop 98 general fund money to support student mental health and technology needs, and $100 million in one-time Prop 98 general fund dollars to address food insecurity, including meal donation programs, food pantries serving students, CalFresh enrollment, or other means of directly providing nutrition assistance to students, and assisting homelessness and to assist homeless and housing insecure students in securing stable housing. I've been having conversations with the administration. I've been having conversations with my colleagues in the Assembly and the Senate about, you know, what the best strategy for that is. I think, you know, we'll get to that in a minute with my bill AB 775. But I just at least appreciate the governor's budget proposal and how it shows a deep commitment to addressing these student basic needs, which I know are a priority for the legislature, and I think are one of the big issues stopping students from being able to attend community college.
Yeah, certainly, and actually, that, you know, that's a perfect segue, Senator Berman, and I think that leads perfectly into our kind of next kind of question here. And you know, specifically, I'd like to get your kind of, you know, perspective on this, but of course, you know, I'd love to have Senator Medina, you know, chime in too. I know you've been very supportive as well, and this is the issue of AB 775. You know, the SCCC, of course, sponsors legislation with you as Senator Berman, and as you know, we would establish basic needs coordinators and centers on every community college. And, you know, of course, you and I know we heard student voices loud and clear about the importance of this legislation. But I really wanted to turn to you in what you think. I think so much of the drive behind this issue, of course, has been students, but you have shown, I think, a particular passion for this issue. I think that in many ways is unmatched by many of your colleagues in the legislature, has really set you apart. And I want to hear, what you think. I want you to share, I think, why you think this legislation is important, and what community college stakeholders, because I know they're on this call, students, college officials, and faculty, what do you want them to know about this bill?
Really appreciate that. And let me start by thanking you and SSCCC for your partnership on the issue of student basic needs, starting all the way back in 2019, when you all sponsored AB 302, my first bill on student basic needs, the Safe Lots bill to let homeless students sleep in their parking lots on campus. I also really want to thank Assemblymember Medina, who has been a true partner in these efforts. These haven't been easy. They've been controversial, much to my surprise. And having Assemblymember Medina, the chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee, as a partner through the whole thing, has been critically important to my success and ability to increase awareness around these issues, and this year hopefully be successful on getting some legislation passed. I really first learned about the basic needs issues by hearing directly from students, by students that would come and testify at our select committee hearings. We had one hearing focused just on students, but we had students come and testify at all of them. And the 90% of the feedback we got was around homelessness, food insecurity, and lack of access to mental health services. Those were really the common themes of a lot of what we heard. I had no choice. I had to champion this issue because it was something I was hearing about, on such a regular basis. It's such a righteous issue, in a place like California where the cost of living is so high. When students of all different ages and backgrounds and life experiences want to get a higher education, but the thing that's holding them back is that they can't afford housing or they can't afford 3 meals a day. We need to do better, and the state needs to do better to provide you with the basic needs that you have, so that you can then go get an education, enter the workforce, and give back to the state, because that kind of healthy ecosystem is what's critical to the strength of California's economy. Like we talked about, the pandemic has really exacerbated this dire situation as students attempt to manage mass unemployment, homelessness, housing insecurity, hunger, increased family obligations, and health and mental health concerns, all while trying to maintain your studies. And it's really a fundamental issue of equity. And until all students have ongoing and consistent access to food to eat and a place to live, educational equity goals will never be realized. So that's why I introduced AB 302, which we talked about a little bit, and happy to dig into more. But the bottom line is, while AB 302 did not become law, it was incredibly successful in shining a spotlight on the basic needs of students. And the good news is community colleges have really begun taking steps. Some of them were already doing it. Others are doing more now to take steps to meet the basic needs of their students through food pantries, housing related efforts, and other services and resources. But there's more work that we need to do. And students have expressed that the current system is really fragmented with no single point of contact, tasked with overseeing existing basic needs services and resources. And that was why I introduced AB 775, which would provide a coordinated and integrated approach to address students' basic needs by, as you mentioned, Andrew, by establishing a basic needs center and basic needs coordinator on each community college campus in California. A basic needs center and coordinator would provide a single point of contact for students to more easily access, gain awareness, and be connected to basic needs services and resources. Some community colleges are already moving in the direction of a more coordinated and integrated approach. In fact, the Chancellor's Office reports that about 59 community colleges already have some form of basic needs center. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. However, as campuses physically closed and moved to online classes during the pandemic, the existing basic needs challenges that students face have become even more pronounced and urgently require action, which is why the work continues. And as all you know, the focus on basic needs is so important for students because it's about survival. Without basic needs such as housing and food and mental health, how can students be expected to achieve academic success and meet their educational goals and reap the benefits of higher education? So, we all know how important this issue is. We know that different groups and different students are impacted disproportionately than others, and basic needs and security has a direct impact on student academic success. It's been a long-standing problem even before the pandemic, but the pandemic has really exacerbated the need, and it continues to be one of my top priorities.
Thank you so much, Senator Berman. And yeah, we really, really appreciate your leadership on this and for sponsoring this legislation, and totally second the Assembly Bill 302, that idea that really shone that spotlight on this issue, helped bring so much attention to it. And I think it's, very much thanks to you, Assemblyman Berman, but also, Assemblyman Medina for that as well. And I'll actually turn to you for your thoughts here too.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Easy. I just need to agree with everything my colleague, Mr. Berman, said. But actually, I want to thank him for being such a champion. He sees a need. He sees the need. He realizes the need, and working with you, he takes direct action as he did in his first bill. And I think this is a great idea. I was very happy to support it when it came to my committee. But I want to also just personally thank Assembly Berman for both the previous bill and for this one. And I have to say that knowing my colleague and why he does it, he has a big heart. He has a big heart. He doesn't want to see students in the predicament that they are in, and he's taking these very concrete steps that are needed. I think one of the things that we've seen is how difficult it has been for students to navigate all these different, whether it be student aid or CalFresh, that help may exist, but it's not in one place. You have to go here, you have to go there, you get a run around, you have to deal with the bureaucracy. And I think that putting everything in one place is certainly going to be a great help to students. So I'm very happy to, again, support Mr. Berman and the students' efforts to address student need.
Thank you very much, Senator Medina. And I know we only have a few short minutes here, but if we know we have a little Q&A portion, so if folks feel like asking a question, please throw maybe a few in the chat, and maybe we can address maybe one question before we have to leave with our wonderful members here today. So.
We were too thorough, Jose.
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Let's see here. I do have one question that maybe we could address with some of the brief time that we have here. One student has asked a very simple question, but a very complex question, maybe about your background. And the student asks, what's the best advice you can give to a student who wants to make a career out of legislative advocacy? Where should they start? Maybe what should they look to? I'd love to have any of you take a stab at it. Since Senator Medina went last, I'll maybe go to you, Senator Berman.
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things that I'd suggest. One is there's a fellows program in the legislature that in the Assembly and in the Senate, and those fellows get a great insider experience for a year, working in a legislative office. I've been lucky to have a fellow all 5 years now of my time in the assembly, and then work in legislative office and really get to know the inside, get to know how the legislative process works, I think is really important. And to then, if you want, go join with different advocacy organizations to then advocate and lobby. But I think it's really important to know how the process works. That'll make you a much stronger advocate. But I couldn't recommend highly enough, pursuing that passion, pursuing that career, I think is incredibly righteous and noble.
I would add to that, looking for internship possibilities in members' offices, and then just in the realm of this whole political work that we do, I would also add the possibility of working on a campaign. I think you also get very much insight into the political process if you volunteer on a campaign at any level, whether it's state, federal, or local. I think all of those
and I should say,
are important.
Totally agree. And I did both of those things when I was younger. I interned in a political office, and I worked on campaigns for a few years. So totally agree with Mr. Medina about those suggestions.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, both of you, and hopefully with that advice, we'll see two of the folks on this call here for the panel several years from now, and we'll get to hear their experiences and thoughts. So thank you so much for your time, and you said, covered a lot of ground today, a lot of an excellent ground, but thank you so much for your time, Assemblymember Medina and Assemblymember Berman. We really appreciate your leadership and your work, and